Junkman.
Grips, get ready. I want to sight on this Jaguar. Lights on the hood. We're going to run down the riverbed. Hoy, we're going to have a little action here, babe.
From the maker of Gone in 60 Seconds, the chase thriller of the 70s, comes the chase thriller of the 80s, The Junkman. From junk cars to movie stars, Harlan Hollis is the American dream, worth millions, and now someone wants it all.
Yeah, the Junkman lives with his life on the line. They're trying to kill him and he's running out of time. He loves his cars and he loves his child. He's a millionaire and born too wild.
Michael, why do they call him the Junkman?
Before he decided to get into the movie-making business, he was in the auto junk business, and now he collects stuff.
Fans from around the world gather here to pay tribute to a great American legend, the brilliant star of East of Eden, Giant, and the classic Rebel Without a Cause.
Harlan B. Hollis will hereafter be referred to only as the target.
Deadly assassins with their aircraft and speeding cars close in for the kill. He did his own stunts in his movies, but this time he's driving for his life.
Don't hit me!
The Junkman brings you intense high-speed action. Witness the destruction of over 150 vehicles in some of the most daring airplane, car, and blimp stunts ever filmed.
Yeah, the Junkman drives like a bat out of hell. His dreams come true like a ring in a bell. The bombs and the bullets are coming his way, and his money won't help him get away today.
It's time to put the fun back in the theater with entertainment for the entire family. The Junkman, 2 years in the making. The chase thriller of the 80s. Rated PG.
Junkman.
So you're going to show us this very private room, huh?
Yeah, some of the memorabilia of many years in the car business, mostly cars.
Now, no one gets to usually see this room.
No.
This is your private.
My private little room. I had become head of the Ford division, which was the biggest division in the company, in 1960. And me and a couple of young Turks decided to start a thing called the Fairlane Committee because we couldn't meet in the company. It was almost illegal to be working on a program other than the approved programs. So we met at the Fairlane Motel in Dearborn, Michigan. We said, we want something with action. We want something that's an animal or a bird, something. And I never forget, because he went and he spent about a week there, and he started with aardvark, double A, and it ended up with zebra. But then we said, cut the stuff, we said, take all the action horses, and we had Pinto in there, Palomino, you name it. So that's the way it was. People thought it was named after the P-51 Mustang airplane, but it wasn't. In Texas, they thought it was named after the Southern Methodist University Mustang football team, but it was really named after the Western wild pony called Mustang. So when it came out at the World's Fair, and that was a
What was the date?
April 17th, 1964. We were fortunate. Remember, this was only 6 months before Jack Kennedy had been assassinated, and President Johnson came in, and in April of that year, he decided to make his mark as a new president. He reduced everybody's taxes. I mean, a lot. There was a huge tax reduction. So the euphoria of a tax reduction, the World's Fair in New York was starting April 17th, that day. So that's why we announced it that day. And Walt Disney Sr. and Henry Ford Jr. and I cut the ribbon to open our big exhibit. And there we had, instead of just an exhibit, we had a new car. And of course, it got coverage on cover of Newsweek, cover of Time. I mean, it just worked. And a lot of that, was pure luck. It was a great looking car, and it had a great little V8. We ran out of V8s quickly. Everybody wanted a V8 in power because it looked like a powerful car. It was a wonderful time to be in a car business. It was just doing what we wanted to do. We had a playpen. And remember, this was coming we were doing this in 1961. This was coming off the Edsel fiasco that lasted 58, 59, 60. So when I tried to sell it to Henry Ford, nobody wanted to buy it because they had just had such a loss on that car. They didn't want another lemon in the stable so quick. So they weren't too hot on approving this program. And we finally did it by showmanship. We showed them the finished car, we told them what it was, then we built a prototype and they started running it with a V8. And once I sold Henry Ford, who owned the company, it was all over. He said, we better go with that one. I always tell that story because it's true. He said, it's a little tight in the back seat. I said, well, we tried to make it a 2+2. Better make it 4. So you've got to add an inch. And everybody said, oh, God, at this late date to add an inch is costly. I'd added 10 inches to save the car. Whatever he wanted to do, I was ready to do then. So that was the evolving of any car. And it took, probably in those days, it took long. Now probably took us 3 full years from 61 to the 64 introduction. And remember, all the engines and chassis were in place. That's why we were able to do it. All we did was they call reskinning, but we reskinned the whole thing. We changed the proportions of the car.
Tell them what reskinning means. So, like,
well, you change all the sheet metal. You just make believe you have a chassis, like sometimes they show in ads, a chassis with somebody sitting on it and no body over them. The fenders, the doors, the greenhouse, which is the windshield, roof, and the deck. Anything of sheet metal is we call reskinning. Sometimes you reskin just the front end, sometimes the rear, and this was from scratch completely. So there were a lot of people involved, and it was a good team effort that worked. You know, and the name's still around. There are a lot of cars came and went. They're gone. The Mustang is still a nice car today, and remember now we're in its 37th year or something. So I guess it's here to stay.
Now you love pretty cars and fast cars. Tell me about that.
Well, I always loved them. In fact, I bought Maserati and I bought Lamborghini, both of them at Chrysler, of all places, and to try to get an image and try to get some pizzazz into the line. So I used to follow. I had a couple of Ferraris. I used to collect a few cars. I always liked hot cars.
You always liked
Drove them fast.
How fast?
Nothing like the film I just saw, where they crash into cars. It's an amazing film, by the way. Yeah.
That's one of your babies, Eleanor and Toby.
Eleanor in the movie. Well, I think that's a 73, if I'm not mistaken. So that's a later Mustang.
Right.
The smaller one started in 66, went through late 69, the 70 model. So 71 through 73 were these Mach 1s, which were real powerful because they had, remember we started with a 6, took it to 225, the V8, ended up with a 260, then a 289. That's a 351. And in that light body, that went, you know, that was the hot rod part of the line, fastback, a different style than the original one. But that was during that first 5 to 6 years, and it was just a howling success. Remember, we had a hard top, that was standard. A year later, we came out with a convertible. And then 2 years later, we came up with the fastback, which is what Mach 1 was derived of later. At Ford, we were trying to get a youthful image. You know, the Mustang was the crowning achievement of it. But prior to that, we got into racing, and we went racing every place in the world, and that's when I met Shelby. And believe it or not, Ford Motor Company, with a lot of money, we decided to win Le Mans, the 24 hours. We decided to win Daytona, which we did. We won everything. Then we got crazy, and we decided to win the Indianapolis 500 with a V8 engine, probably the same Windsor V8 block, you know. But Shelby was a character, and Shelby knew what he was doing in the youth and racing business, and really came up with the Cobra as a derivative. And he took the first, he called it a Boss Mustang, we called it. And what he did was soup up the engine. And now you had a real muscle car. And the reason we started gravitating to that is the General Motors reaction to the Mustang, which was not a muscle car, essentially. It was a good little sporty car. But the muscle car starting to sell, the Pontiac GTOs and the like. So we started to go racing and put in these bigger engines.
Did you ever think one of your babies would be a leading lady to this degree?
No, no. Cars are often featured, but never one that the lead was the car. I mean, Toby was in the car. You saw him now and then, shots, but I don't know who else was in the film. It didn't matter. It was a crowd. It was a crowd of people watching and getting out of the way.
Did you ever think you'd see one of your babies doing that, flying through the air in that jump?
No, no, no. I'm surprised it held together at all. I don't know how they did that in film yet. It's just amazing that the sheet metal, the skin, you know, was all crumpled, but it hung together, and I guess the mechanical parts between scenes, they probably would have some problems and correct them. That 40-minute chase is amazing. I mean, I can't believe how one person could do that. First of all, get away with it, and do it independently as a filmmaker, and bring it off on low cost and have millions of people come to see it. I guess it's an amazing chase. I've never seen one like that, by the way. Although I did see Gone in 60 Seconds with you. And
the remake.
The new remake is only an 8 to 10 minute chase with Nick Cage in it, and that's pretty spectacular, but nothing like this one. This is just raw meat. This one is different. Properly shown and properly done, that'll get this whole new generation to, well, they may want to make movies because that's an independent filmmaker doing this, but today you wouldn't be able to pull that off. Permits, I bet you with our rules today, how would you ever do that? It'd be almost impossible. So it's so unique and so different, and people like to see high speeds, but they've never seen high speeds with crashes at every corner. You'll have to you'll have to put across it in real big. We do not recommend this for city streets. You know how they often do it when they show car commercials. If it jumps, they say this is under a controlled course. You have to put that down. Don't you dare try it. So you'll have to put plenty of those disclaimers because a kid might think he can go out and do what Toby did. You can't do that. I thought the story had a wonderful human touch, especially when your husband later got killed on the set and they didn't know the background of all this. And it was just another film that was a remake. Most people didn't even know it was a remake. And that's tough to pull off. But you got the right people together, however you did it. And the director, Bruckheimer, and Disney supporting it, or distributing it, I guess. And that takes a lot of work, and you put it together right, because I don't read Variety, but I see on the grosses when it started off like hotcakes, and I guess it hit the $100 million mark, which ain't bad.
I think it could really grow into something. I think it could, be promoted into, even bigger and better racing here. And certainly, this is a great place for it to have it, because obviously it's basically off the streets, except I guess they're using a little bit of Figueroa here. But other than that, I mean, it's certainly a great promotion for Los Angeles, great promotion for automobile racing. When I came out here for press day, I opened my mouth and wound up driving one of them spec trucks. So I got a busy weekend, actually. So besides being Grand Marshal, I'm driving the truck. So, and hopefully I'll have some fun. Kind of remember, I mean, the fact that you can remember Gone in 60 Seconds. And this is bringing a new life to it in a sense. To do it in downtown Long Beach and on the Vincent Thomas Bridge and everything else, I mean, he was something else. He obviously had a lot of will, a lot of determination with this project. Well, I noticed that the fact that I think he wrecked something like 94 cars in the film, and anyway, and then Eleanor, and the way it ended, I mean, had to be one of the most fabulous endings to any movie, because I think when he drove that thing clunking into the car wash and then drove out in some other lady's car and the gal passed out, I seen the people just literally stand up and cheer. And I thought it was a tremendous ending. Because I was racing at Ascot and Gardena an awful lot, and he was kind of next door to Ascot, and used to come to the races, and I got to know him a little bit. And when he started this film, I thought he was totally nuts, and maybe he was. But anyway, and I never really thought it would get off the ground. And of course, he had asked me at the time, I had a pretty famous Bronco that I'd won the Baja 1000 a couple of times with, and he wanted to steal it for the movie. So I said, yeah, and there we were, and then wound up being a little part of the film.
That Bronco is a very successful car. It's very near and dear to Parnelli's heart. It was hand-built in our shops, tube frame, 351 Windsor engine, 380 horsepower. Very strong car. Parnelli won the 1971 and 1972 Baja 1000s, set a new record in that, doing that. And it also won the 1973 Baja 500. So the car, along with the Baja wins, also won the Mint 400 in Las Vegas. I met Toby on several occasions. He came to our shop to scout the location on a few times, but more importantly, I visited him several times in his wrecking yard, I guess you'd call it, in Gardena, where I was impressed with his model collection. He parked his car right next to his desk. I'd never seen that before. That was quite interesting. The guy was a very interesting man. I enjoyed being around him. I'd probably been in his presence I'd say 10 or 12 times, and I enjoyed it each time. And he got a great kick out of watching your face as he toured his little museum with you, with all his toy collection and all the things that he had there. He got great enjoyment out of that, and I thought it was quite a thing to have, and I say he was quite a talented guy to do what he did.
The fact that in fact, even when I was a small part at the time, I figured that it was no big deal. It wasn't ever going to be anything like he finally made the film to be. I mean, most of the people that participated in the film, I don't think were really actors or actresses. And I mean, what he did is just marvelous. I mean, unbelievable what the final product became. I was really impressed because when he certainly had the premiere showing in Long Beach, and they did a few stunts with the police cars and Eleanor right down on the main street of Long Beach. And then also the fact that when he had the party at the junkyard, so to speak, he carpeted the floor, took the car that he burnt, the Cadillac that they burned up, and made a barbecue out of it, took some cars and cut them in half and made booths out of them. And I mean, it was really fabulous. I mean, things that people just normally wouldn't think about doing. And then I was impressed with his office. I mean, you go to his, it looked like an old town, you know, with the sidewalks and the garage and different things like that. And he'd come up and press the remote control, and part of the building would open, and he'd drive his car right into his office. He was a tremendous guy.
Toby had an office before he ever had a movie next to Agajanian Enterprises, my father's office. And let me tell you about that. I worked at my father's office for many years. We had the Ascot Park racetrack where my father promoted races for many years. Toby knew about racing because he was one of the guys. He knew about automotive things, he knew about racing, he knew about anything that had four wheels and went fast. Toby enjoyed that stuff. I went next door and introduced myself to Toby and told him that I was a neighbor next door, and that if you hear loud noises or engines firing up, give us a break, don't call the police, because we often fired up our race cars over there. In fact, the race car that's sitting behind me right now is the Agajanian Evel Knievel Special. And it was driven by Gary Bettenhausen. Gary grew up in Tinley Park, Illinois, and Gary's father, Tony Bettenhausen, also drove for my father back at Indianapolis, and that's going way back. Gary also was a championship midget racer, and when Toby shot the sequence at Ascot Park, where they go and steal J.C. Agajanian's Rolls Royce, Gary Bettenhausen was in that part of the movie, and he was driving midgets at that time. Of course, went on to be a great Indianapolis champion and went on to drive this race car right behind me. Evel Knievel also jumped his motorcycles at Ascot Park, and in fact came to my father for his first national jump because my father promoted races on ABC's Wide World of Sports. Evel knew national publicity was good publicity, so he made a deal with my father and was on one of his national championships. All right there in the infield where Toby shot this movie. Toby knew in the back of his mind that he had a big movie to do with a small budget. He was an independent filmmaker who had a lot of brains and a lot of savvy. In the back of my mind, I still believe that Toby invited me to be in his movie because he knew if J.C. Agajanian's son, J.C. Agajanian Jr., was in the movie, well, Aggie would be happy to invite Toby over. Toby, his neighbor, don't forget our offices were next to each other, over to Ascot Park, and he'd be able to shoot some of his movie there. The parts that you saw were shot on an evening of a United States Auto Club midget event there. The grandstands were full. There were 5,000 or 6,000 people there. It would cost a lot of money to have 5,000 or 6,000 extras sit in the grandstands, but since he was buddies with JC, he got to use all of our fans as backdrop. Not only all of our fans, but Parnelli was there, Gary Bettenhausen was there, there were numerous other celebrities there, and Toby made his way through the crowd. It was just a wonderful scene at Ascot, and again, that didn't cost Toby anything to do. It was his friendships, and it was calling in friendships when he really needed them. He was finally making his movie. We got a call on our walkie-talkies to come to 190th Street from the marina and set up this block. Now, we had a little pre-production discussion with Toby, and Toby told us what he wanted to do and how he wanted it to happen. He wanted us to set the cars up across 190th, and he said, now Jay, I'm going to be coming straight at you. I'm going to have all these squad cars chasing me. They're going to be from Carson and Compton and Gardena, and all these cop cars will be chasing me, and I'll be in Eleanor, and I'll be coming straight at you. Now, when I get to you, you're going to have a roadblock there, and you're going to have your gun out. And I said, okay, Toby, I can do that. And he said, I'm going to do one of those spin deals where I spin the car around and I take back off up 190th at all these cop cars that are chasing me, and they're going to scatter. And then I'm going to go over to the Cadillac agency and we're going to do all the rest of that scene. I said, right on, Toby, we can do that. He said, now don't forget, be shooting at me and have your gun ready. I said, no problem, Tove, I got it for you. We take our places. You'll see in the scene where we're at the agency and our cars, the cop cars, go across and they make the roadblock there. And I stand in front of the cop cars, and you'll see in that scene that I'm aiming my gun at him and I'm shooting at him, and I'm really acting here, you know. And I'm not an actor. Toby had a lot of people in his picture that really weren't actors. In fact, I think we had the actors way outnumbered, all of us that were helping Toby, all of his friends. So Toby was coming at me, and then the same shot that you see in the movie, I'm looking at, but in person. And I'm seeing Toby coming at me in Eleanor, and this yellow Mustang's flying at me, and these cars, and all the lights are blinking, and I'm shooting and I'm aiming, and I'm getting a little nervous here because Toby's still going very fast. And my father, I've grown up in the racing community. I've grown up around race cars all my life. And I have a pretty good judge of speed and what a car can do within a certain amount of time. Toby doesn't slow down, and he's coming at me, and I'm shooting, and I'm thinking in my mind, Toby, this is where you should start skidding and spinning the car. And he isn't doing it. So I'm thinking, and this is all going down in just a few seconds, I'm thinking, I better get out of the way just in case he can't stop this, because it appears to me that he's not going to be able to stop. So as you'll see in the scene, I jump over the car. I still am trying to stay in character, right? I'm a detective. I've got to stop this crazy man in this Mustang, so I'm still shooting at him, right? Well, I can see still that Toby isn't going to stop. I've been to a lot of racetracks. I know this guy isn't going to stop this car in time. So all of the ideas about Toby doing the big spin around and going the other way, that all flies right out the window. I'm trying to get the scene done, and Toby now goes into a four-wheel lockup, and that car is skidding straight at me. Now, I've since, as you know, I dove over the car, and I'm going, Toby, you're not going to be able to stop in time. And so I start backpedaling. I'm kind of like Michael Jackson doing the moonwalk, right? I'm backing up, and all of a sudden, wham, he hits the back of my squad car, and that car flies right in front of me. Now, I was backing up as quickly as I could, and that car, came within an eighth of an inch. I could feel the car go by me. Toby, now, scene cuts. Of course, the car's a mess. Eleanor's crashed. There's steam coming out. Now, you don't see this in the movie, right? Because it looks seamless. It looks as though he hit the car and then he's turned around, and then the next shot you see is him flying back the other way and heading for the agency. We all stop. We have a Coke. I'm wiping my brow, going, I nearly got killed just then. I'm excited. Toby's excited. All the crew, and they're going, that was awesome. Okay, great, wonderful. Then they have to fix Eleanor. They fix Eleanor. They had a whole truck that just followed around with Mustang parts just to fix it after Toby crashed it. They came up and got it going. And then we went on with the rest of the scene. Okay, and the rest of the scene is flying through the Cadillac agency, wiping out the front line, and that's a whole nother deal. That front line deal, Toby had owned a few Cadillacs. Toby bought all these cars that you saw get crashed. He owned them all. We put the crew, I say we because I feel a part of it. The staging was to put some of Toby's cars right there in the front row of the Cadillac agency, and the other cars were brand new Cadillacs right off the set. They were real Cadillacs. Well, we put some water underneath the tires of the car, so when they hit, they would pancake easily. Instead of crashing and bending, the cars would go together, and you'd have that whole scene that you saw. Well, it worked too well, and Toby hit it too hard because he not only crashed his own Cadillacs, it crashed into some of the brand new Cadillacs on that front line. And I'll tell you what, the agency, the people there were going crazy, and that acting where he almost fainted, well, that was for real because he saw his own cars getting crashed. After that, I have to tell you one more little piece that's completely aside from what you saw in the movie. There weren't rushes like we have today. After you shoot a scene today, we all get together and you go in and you see what you shot. Well, we didn't have that luxury. Toby was making this movie by himself with his own money. I mean, we had to wait and develop what film we had. So Toby, a day or so later, called me over to his office. And I was certain, we were good friends, and I was certain Toby was going to tell me, gee whiz, Jay, I'm sure sorry that you almost got hit by that car. The brakes locked up. I couldn't get the thing spun around. It didn't go the way we thought it should go. It didn't go the way we planned it, that's for sure. And I'm sure glad you're okay. And I was sure Toby was going to give me that little speech when I walked in. So I walked into his office. He says, Jay, you have to see this scene. I said, oh, yeah, I do, Toby. He goes, watch it now. Here I come. Now look, you're in front of the car. Yeah, okay. Now you dove behind the car. Yes. Now look, I run into that car and it nearly nails you. Isn't that great? Did you see that scene? It was fantastic, Jay. It was just fantastic. I said, yeah, it was really good, Toby. But he goes, no, Jay, it was wonderful. He goes, now I'll call you back next time you're in the movie. And I walked out of his office going, did he say sorry for almost hitting you? No, I don't think he did. He was all about the movie. And that's what was great about Toby. He knew I was okay. He knew I had survived. I had lunch with him that day, or there was a Coke with him anyway. There wasn't really food services or food. But the point is, I was okay. And as soon as I was okay, what about the movie? Like I said, Toby was all about the movie, and he loved that scene. And the fact that this was a close call and it looked so real, well, it looked so real because it was real. There was nothing fake about it. That was really a great part. And the tag about Toby calling me in to see it and telling me what a great job I did, where all I was doing, I'll tell you, all I was doing was trying to stay out of the way of that car coming at me. It was just fantastic. And I'll tell you something else. It was some years ago, and I'll never, ever forget it. It was awesome.
I'm not what you would call an all-around stunt person by any means. There's people out there that, you know, if I was going to run a show, I'd hire someone else to do a jump off a building, or I'd hire someone else to do something. Everyone has their own little specialty. Mine just is driving. And we have a school, and we teach others, but out of each class, I learn something too. And I think a person that stops learning and rests on the laurels a bit falls behind. So whatever niche that I have in driving, you know, I certainly try to pass it on now. And I just enjoy it. Just cars and airplanes have been the only thing I've known all my life. Anytime I would see someone else do something in a car, many, many years ago, I would go out and try and find a way of doing it myself and see if I couldn't do it easier. And I learned to let the car do an awful lot of work. And in this case, like I said, Eleanor, it still does a lot of the work for us. Driving school's out there for racing, and again, the idea in racing is you want to maintain control, maintain traction to the ground, and you want to take the shortest line possible, thus using apexes. And in reality, when you do what we do, stunt driving, you don't have any apexes per se. You have focal points. And unfortunately, with the cars of today and the way the directors are and everything else, if you go out there and apply racing lines to city streets, you're not going to do very well. Most of the time, what I saw was him looking far enough ahead, in which most drivers have a tendency to look 15, 20 feet in front of the car, down to the asphalt. They're either looking for a bumper sticker or a license tag, see where they're from and all that. And it's a horrible habit, and most people do it. And a driver gets his eyes up and it's pretty much on the horizon. So you're taking in all the information you can and have much better time to react should something go wrong. Finding a, you know, there's, in people in stunt business, they can tell you this. They can tell whether a guy can ride a motorcycle by the way he gets on it, or a horse. And if you've driven enough, you can tell a driver. You know, if he gets in there and first thing he does is 10 and 2 with his hands, or goes hand over hand, you know, I'd be worried myself. As far as being precise and accurate. They can be lucky and they can get a lot of it done. But what I believe in being precise or precision is within inches, not 2 or 3 car widths. You know, that's a huge difference. What I saw in that film, and I'm certainly going to watch it again, I saw a lot of gutsy things. I saw a lot of things that they were very lucky at. And like I said, I didn't even know which one was Toby, and I didn't know anything about this. I heard about it until I saw it. But again, I watched people, and I watched people behind him that hands were everywhere, and the car was going one direction, and they're looking this way, and you could tell that they didn't have a clue. Well, let's back up with Eleanor. I was told Eleanor needed a little tune-up. Eleanor's been sitting around a long time, and there was a whole lot of things to be tuned up, but surprisingly, the car's doing actually quite well. Considering what it's been through, I finally got to see the movie. Car's got a lot of heart. It seemed like, the only time the car didn't overheat is when we was doing that stuff. Everything else, it seemed to overheat a little bit. When we're out there spinning around and making smoke, it just seems to keep on going. Again, for what the car's been through, mechanically, if you had a Ford rep out here, this car had gone to the scrapper. No way, and nor would they believe it would still do some of the stuff it's doing like it is now. I don't know where to start. There isn't anything on it that isn't broke. It hadn't been patched, it isn't fixed, and she's still beating away. So hats off to her. Pretty much anything the car wanted to do. We did some 180s, a couple of 360s, reverse 180s, some good drifts. We took it around the track out there, the whole, what they call the city streets out here. It seemed like the more you do, the more it wanted to do, and it just has the wrong radiator in it, so it's overheating a little bit. But well, when she's fresh and cool, she goes out there and gets after it. To create that illusion of uncontrolled controllability is still by far a rush. And the only I don't know what to compare it to other than taking someone that's never done it and teach them how to do it, and they do it for the first time, and they get this a look that doesn't go away, a little sparkle, whatever it is. One, you know that they learned it, and they can do it consistently, and they know it. And I still get the same when it's on a set or something and do something. Again, to create that illusion is a lot of fun, and there's a lot of things. The other thing about going back to Toby for a second, if you don't mind, is that today I think there's way too many pipe ramps. There's way too many. There's no explanation of why did that car roll over and blow up. And I'd much rather see a movie that has some real good precision driving, right on the edge stuff, than all the. And I know everybody's you got to have the crashes and burns and all that. But when you just see a car roll over in the middle of the street for no reason, and you see 14 more do the same thing, it doesn't add up. And most of the people that come to watch the school or some of the stuff that I do, they always, when are they going to have just a real hair-raising driving kind of movie with a few bangs and bones, that natural stuff,
That's the high I'm talking about. It's the most amazing feeling in the world. Yes, it was amazing.